Service members of Reddit. What is your worst military wife story? While delivering our fourth baby at a military hospital, we were talking to one of the nurses about infidelity and crazy things she had witnessed. She told us about a woman coming in with her husband for a C-section that was not scheduled. The woman insisted that she was scheduled for a C-section that day. They did an ultrasound and found that she was 3 months pregnant. Not 9 months pregnant. She was willing to deliver a baby 6 months early so it would appear the conception lined up with her husband's mid to leave. I was stationed at FT. Kai in the late 80s. A soldier's child turned up missing. Damn near every soldier on FT. Knox was looking for this kid. We looked for days. Kid never turns up. I leave. And move on. Several years later I'm sent back to FT. Knox. Out of the blue. A bunch of activity is happening at a park several miles away. The little girl turned up. Some of her anyway, and it turns out that the soldier's wife, the girl's stepmom, killed the girl. The soldier came home, found out, and hid the body in the park. The whole case was solved because the older sister of the girl was starting to get worried she was next. Told a teacher who got the police involved. That the worst I've heard of. Over 20 plus years in the army. Plenty of cheating. Plenty of other stuff. I got restationed back in the States from Germany. I flew my German girlfriend over and we ended up getting married. She went back to Germany 4 days later and I never saw her again. Lol. Whack. Had a friend do something similar. He married a German girl while in the army. They had 2 kids. He decided he missed USA and moved back here. His wife stayed there for 8 more years raising the kids. They wanted them to go to school there and be stable. So after about 8 years, she comes home. He almost immediately got a job as a trucker. I don't think he liked being around her. Lol. Maybe he liked being married. Having kids. Having the house taken care of. etc, but didn't want to do the work for it and liked his job more. I know some guy who are sailing for months at a time. And have similar marriages. Higher in the ranks. There is an expectation to be married with kids. Standing gate guard in Washington DC. Officer's wife drives through the gate and presents her ID. I wave her through. She doesn't move. Asking me if I forgot something. I said no. I didn't believe I did. She said I forgot to salute her. Pointing to the blue sticker on her windshield. I leaned close to her windshield and saluted the sticker. Wishing it a good afternoon. I got removed from that duty. Repeat after me, you are not your husband's rank. A guy in my shop, Air Force, deployed to Iraq for 4.5 months. Before he left he signed over general power of attorney to his wife. While he was gone, she started ducking another guy in our shop. Then signed the divorce paperwork as his power of attorney and his rights to see his kids. As well as draining his bank account. She went to live with the other guy in my shop and his friend off base. They were both arrested for check fraud when trying to pass off a check that was the roommates in the shopette on base. The guy she divorced eventually got full custody of the kids and the other guy in my shop got kicked out of the AF. There were other stories of cheating and all of that kind of shit. But this one takes the cake. She actively worked to ruin his life when all he did was love his kids and get deployed to Iraq. Don't give anyone general power of attorney. Ever. I don't care how much you trust them or how much you think they love you. Don't do it. You can give them specialized power of attorney that only allows them to handle your affairs that you very specifically need them to handle. General powers are basically worthless nowadays. Posting on behalf of my husband. Worst, they came back from a 15-month tour in Iraq. His platoon sergeant went home to find another man living in his house. With his wife and kids. His kids, toddlers, were calling the guy daddy. When he walked in his wife basically said yay. I want a divorce. I'm with him now. Worst part was the platoon sergeant and new daddy, kinda, worked together. But was one of the few who stayed behind for clerical stuff while the rest deployed. Yes. I know this is absolutely against the rules. This was when shit was the Wild West and a DUI was an unofficial requirement for E6. Oh. I'm gonna post some of my friend's highlights. She was the midwife on an Air Force base. Delivered lots of babies. Colonel brought his 16-year-old daughter in because she was pregnant. Turns out the father was a new junior enlisted. He did not last long in the military. Dude's wife left him and moved in with her boyfriend off base while he was deployed. She got knocked up. Since they were still married, she was still going to the base for medical care. Their divorce wasn't final by her due date, so she still got to go on base and deliver. Her soon-to-be ex-husband, the military guy, had his buddies in security forces put a security flag on his soon-to-be ex-wife's boyfriend. The boyfriend couldn't be on base for the birth of his child. And always the favorite. Babies coming out with the wrong ethnic background of the father was at least a once-a-year thing. My brother-in-law was on both sides of shitty cheating stories. He married a woman he chatted to online for a few weeks when he was 19. Then he had to go to Iraq. A month after he left, she told him that he got her pregnant. He comes home after 6 months, then she has the baby. The baby definitely is not his. Fast forward 10 years. He's married to an awesome chick we all like. She works a job and takes care of everything around the house. He cheats on her with her 18-year-old girl that worked at Sonic. She catches him and leaves for a weekend to go stay with her sister to figure out what to do. He puts all her stuff in cardboard boxes out under the carport and moves in the new girl. He really is a piece of it. Saw a newer airman with no belt on. I asked, why don't you have a belt? He said he can't afford one, so I give him $5 and tell him to go get a belt. A few weeks later I see him at Ruby Tuesday cleaning tables. I ask around and apparently his wife was growing weed in base housing and he got kicked out of the military. He swore he didn't know what she was doing. Do you believe him? If they just said take your ELS right now and we won't court-martial you, I'd believe it. But that would be a sweetheart of a deal in his favor. No way he gets out unscathed any other way. Oh man. I got one. Dude comes home from Iraq. Beats the shit out of his wife. Like a lot. She is in the hospital more than once. But no charges are ever brought up. BC military town. Military police. Military wife. Finally. He shoots her when he was drunk. She lives. But just barely. Fast forward a few months later and dude ends up floating in the river. Murdered. Gang violence. Retaliation for almost killing his wife. Bar fight gone bad? Who knows? Military town. Military police. His wife sets up a memorial and several people decide to not go. Yeah, no. Due to the fact that this guy tried murdering his wife. Wife has emotional breakdown over people caring more about her than him. He's the brave one. She's at fault. He's the hero. So yeah. Military wives. Am I right? Edit. Thank you for the Reddit Platinum. Kind stranger. I appreciate the award. But I'm going to use this time to bring attention to the DAV. It's a program by veterans for veterans just trying to make their way through our civilian lifestyle. It worth your donation. DAV.org. Oh man, so many. One friend in the Corps. A first-term sergeant who hated every minute he was in uniform. He re-enlisted so she could go to school. Left for deployment after re-enlistment. Came back to a divorce and a drained bank account. Had another sergeant who met his wife while he and like 7 other guys were running a gangbang on her. He decided he needed to marry her. So many sheet stories there. But I mean, he probably deserved them. Cause I mean, wow. How did you two meet? Well, it was a magical night and I was the 5th guy to big dig her down that night and thought, I need to get to know this woman better. She could be the one. Dude in my platoon's wife falsely accused her ex-MP boyfriend of rape. Went as far as stabbing a mattress and swallowing condom to set him up. Dude spends weeks in jail before being cleared of all charges. When it comes to light, it was crazy lady vindictive bullshit. She amped up the crazy. She handed her friend her and my platoon mate's baby through a window at night while they watched a movie. platoon mate went to check on the baby and it was missing. Prompted the first Amber Alert in Alaska history. She tried to pin it on the MP as some sort of act of vengeance. I can only imagine what the poor dude was thinking when the cops came to him with this. He was very quickly eliminated as subject and they figured out that the baby was safe rather quickly. Wait, why'd she swallow a condom? The issue is that people forget the military is filled with 18-20-year-old boys. Many of whom lacked relationship experience. And marry the first girl who gives them attention. I am a military spouse. But worked as a DoD employee with the Marines. Got a call that a military spouse was in the hospital. Her place on base housing had gotten broken into. The 9-month pregnant spouse was raped and beaten and taken by ambulance to the hospital. The assault caused a miscarriage. I was devastated and went to the hospital with several officers in the Marines chain of command. One of the nurses tending her looked me in the eye and said, "I am very interested in how this is going to play out." I was so confused. The 9-month pregnant rape and assault victim was given an ultrasound and blood work performed upon being admitted to the hospital. She hadn't been pregnant. She wasn't raped. Her due date was the next day and she's been faking the pregnancy the whole time. She beat herself up and carved herself up with a knife, then made up the rape story resulting in miscarriage as a way to cover up the 9 months of lying to her husband about being pregnant. I've never seen this level of crazy until 3 months later. When said Marine reunited with batshit crazy girl even after all that. We recently witnessed the exact same level of crazy. Soldier deploys. Is told by spouse a few weeks later that she just found out she's pregnant. Provides photos of positive pregnancy test. Ultrasound photos. Growing belly photos, the works. Suddenly the soldier gets a call from the Red Cross that his wife has been attacked and she lost the baby. He is flown home. Weeping all the way. When he lands, he is immediately interrogated for a false Red Cross report. Turns out the wife faked the entire pregnancy as well as the attack and miscarriage. The soldier was still under the impression that his unborn son had died after his pregnant wife had been raped. And was nearly shocked into a nervous breakdown when they told him the truth. They cleared him of all involvement. Not sure what makes these women so batshit crazy. It destroys lives. Not a service member. But my uncle is NCO. His first wife cheated on him with the colonel's wife. He found them in a very sexual situation in his own house. So he did what he have to. And he yeeted them naked out of the house for all the other people living in the military houses to see, including the colonel. Got a divorce. Full custody of kids. Props for the eat. Dude was tag teaming a girl with a friend and she got pregnant. The guy I knew took full responsibility and married the girl. Who was also a stripper during the week. Kid wasn't his but he stayed and had 2 more kids with her. He was a smart guy and we all told him to bail when the kid wasn't his but he stayed. She also had an 8th grade education and was the dumbest person I had ever met. That must have been some top shelf banging. I was pretty naive and got maneuvered into a couple of shit situations. First, somehow ended up alone with colleague's wife. She starts telling sexy stories. And getting closer and closer to me. Tells me something like, "Nobody gives better BJS than me." It made sense in conversation. But also wasn't really necessary. My somewhat intoxicated response, "Okay. Then. Good night. I'll be leaving now." Second, was drinking with a different colleague. He got very intoxicated. And, out of the blue, starting berating me for trying to sleep with his wife. I did not want to sleep with his wife. And was not trying to. Noped out of there. 2. Later that night, wife showed up at my apartment. Ostensibly to apologize. Heard some other rumors. But was never sure what to believe. I was in the Officer Club in Okinawa around 2012 or so. In walk at least 6 women in slutty, cute off shorts versions of flight suits that were bright orange. I was pretty confused until my Marine friend told me that meant their husbands were deployed and they were looking for a good time. Apparently it was an open secret. While I was in the Air Force. Way back in 2003 or so, a guy's wife started hanging out in the dorms without her husband. Me and my buddy avoided her because we figured it wasn't going to turn out okay. Yeah. Turns out she was just running through every guy in the dorms and even had sex with a guy in our shop. I mean that literally. He brought her into the shop and they had sex on one of our workbenches. Again. Back in the early 2000s. Guy I know had his wife attack him with an iron skillet. Both of them were active duty. He ended up choking her out because she was trying to heal him. Cops get called because it's base housing and walls are paper thin. Wife admits she attacked him and he was just defending himself. First sergeant presses charges on the husband. Husband gets found guilty and kicked out of the AF and becomes a house husband for his wife who is still in the military. Wife never got charged with anything. A friend of mine came home one day early from a year-long deployment. Wife was busy ducking another guy on the couch. In the bedroom was a baby she had never mentioned. Fathered by yet a third guy. I got two. We had a particularly worthless piece of shit in my unit. Let's call him Warren for sake of the story. Warren was the single stupidest sob I have ever met in my entire life. Bar none. Absolute sheep marine who could legitimately barely tie his shoes. The fact that this dude had passed through the recruiters boot camp and soy was a pox on the name of the Marine Corps in my opinion. This dude got married before we left for our first tour. It took her about 3 days to send in pictures of her getting a train run on her by 6 black dudes. Him and his wife were both pastel lily white. Not trying to make it racist, just setting the scene. She proceeded to get knocked up during one of these trysts which she was holding at their base housing regularly. She found out which one of the dudes was the father and had him move into their house. When we returned from deployment, he proceeded to forgive her and continue to let her baby daddy live in the house with them. That went on for a couple months till the dude beat him up and they called PMO to get him out of there. Fast forward a few years. I am awaiting separation cause I reached the end of my contract. So is Warren cause we went to boot camp together. He made it all the way somehow. We were living in a barracks designated for soon to be separating Marines. He would hang out and bum beers of people to get drunk, while she would make her way from room to room looking for big dick with a decent success rate. That was the state of things when I packed up my sheet and left. She offered me a goodbye BJ, which I politely declined. The other dude was also a piece of shit. We will call him Niles. He was one of our junior Marines and was worthless from day one. Dude smoked a pack a day and never passed an annual fitness test as far as I know. Physically and mentally weak. Lived in off-base housing with his wife. The story we got was that his lady was literally puking in the toilet drunk when he proposed to her in between volleys and she said yes and went through with it. This dude would have some of the platoon over to his apartment on the weekends to do some drinking and hanging out. I never went. Mostly because I was very hard on him during the workday, being as how I was this Chuckle Ducks team leader. The story I heard from multiple sources was that every party went pretty much the same way. They would all start drinking. Niles would get wasted way early cause he was a lightweight. Pass out. And then his wife would pick 1-3 other guys there and let them have their way with her in the other room while he drunkenly slept the night away. You get only the classiest of people in the Marine Infantry.